And again, I'm just delighted to have these amazing guest speakers with us. Everybody's going on Facebook, wow, wow, and more wows. And we've got another wow with us now. And welcome. Before we start, I must check your pronunciation of your wonderful name. Is it Thad or Thaddeus do you prefer?
It's my name is Thad, but I like that was what my name was given to me, but I like the name Thaddeus too, that's kind of like my nickname, I guess.
Well, I'm going to have to share this because I've checked people's names in Google and it come up as that. I was calling you Tad and it come up as Thad. So I thought I have to check this with you. But are you okay with Tad or Thaddeus do you prefer?
It doesn't matter really. It's fine. I'll answer to all of them.
Big welcome. So let me announce you officially, Tad. So the conference is truly blessed to secure Thaddeus Cheatham from the US, from Alabama, isn't it? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So Tad is a coach, a mentor, certified detox and iridology specialist. He works with people around the world, and I love this about you, Tad. He also helps run his family's health store. And I know we had a few issues with time, and it's still really early there, but thank you. Many blessings for joining us. Tad spent over 25 years, a little bit of background, being overweight and suffering from emotional and physical pain, fatigue, sleep apnea, chronic indigestion, chronic bronchitis, and feelings of low self-esteem, low self-worth. He's been on his own health journey and for over 16 years and lost over 100 pounds. This is in weight. Now he dedicates his life to helping others learn the art of cellular regeneration and delve into the world of iridology, which, if you haven't heard of it, and it absolutely fascinates me, is the study of the iris of the eyes as it relates to cellular weaknesses. Tad is a level 2 certified detoxification specialist, iridologist trained by Dr. Robert Morse, ND, and he's learned all about herbs, vitamins, supplements, natural home and beauty care products in his family store. So I'd like to hand over to Tad in his presentation of what is iridology and what does it mean to me. Thank you. You are most welcome.
Thank you so much. I look forward to this presentation today on iridology, because it really does mean a lot to me. I'm really passionate about it because I've seen the accuracy in how, studying of the iris, there's so many times that I would tell people that I see certain weaknesses or certain things that's going on in their eyes, and they would say, well, how did you know that? Because they didn't tell me nothing about themselves previously. And I said, well, your eyes told me, and it's understanding it. And once you understand what you're looking at, it really is very interesting form of diagnosis or science of understanding. But yes, as Marie said, I've spent the last 16 years helping my parents and family at their health food store that we have. That's where I learned about all the herbs and the natural care beauty products and natural, healthy herbs and just different things to help our bodies, and help our health. And then I found out about in 2000, and I think it was 2010, 2009, somewhere around there, I found out about Dr. Robert Morris. And he's down in Florida, and he's a naturopath doctor, and he was good friends with Dr. Jensen, and he had already learned about iridology before, he met Dr. Jensen, but then, he just got more involved in it, I guess, after he met Dr. Jensen. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Jensen was, his name was Dr. Bernard Jensen. He was the one that really became what we call the father of iridology in America, the American form of iridology, and that's what I was going to show you guys tonight is that, see, yes, I have, see, this is my certification of clinical iridology with Dr. Morris. It may be in reverse. You may not be able to see it, but I really have learned a lot from Dr. Jensen's books. And that's what I was going to show, just so people could understand. This is, again, it may be reversed. I don't know if the camera's reversed, but this is his first volume 1 iridology book that he come out with in the 50s. And that was a good understanding. But back then, they didn't have as much technology to take the good photographs, that they did in the 80s. When he come out with the more in-depth iridology book, which is the volume 2. And this is where I learned about 80% of the iridology that I learned. And then the other 20% that I added to it was when I learned it from Dr. Morris. But also, here's a great book, Iridology Simplified, that Dr. Jensen come out with. It's just a real small, basic book for those that are beginning, wanting to understand about iridology, and just a basic understanding of it, And then I'll be talking about one of Dr. Jensen's other books, The Guide to Better Bowel Care, because there's an important part in here that he talks about, the neurological connection to our iris and our body's nervous system, and I'm going to be going over that because it's really interesting, how everything ties in together, So let's get into it. The first thing that I want to explain is, what is iridology? And I'm going to be reading some of the things I've wrote down to keep my words in line that I've gotten from Dr. Jensen and that I've just learned over the years. That's the basic understanding of iridology. And it is a method whereby the health practitioner can tell from markings or signs in the iris the reflex conditions of various organs and systems of the body. And these markings represent a detailed picture of the integrity of the body, its constitutional strength, that's our genetics, the areas of congestion or toxic accumulations, like, lymphatic waste, poisons, chemical toxicity, environmental toxicity, toxicity from, drugs and, just different kinds of forms of toxins that we're exposed to, including sulfur. I'm going to be going over that too. Sulfur is an accumulation in the iris that we can see from taking different sulfur medications, like antibiotics and different sulfur supplements like MSM, glucosamine, chondroitin. There's so many different products that have natural occurring sulfur. Well, that sulfur builds up in our body and can cause congestion for the lymphatic system and cause an overgrowth of candida or waste, in the body too, because they feed on that sulfur, and then it says it's areas of congestion or toxic accumulation and inherent strengths and weaknesses. It can show us where we have these genetic strengths and weaknesses according to the constitution of the iris. And it's very interesting because all of the fibers of the iris are connected to the nervous system. And that's how you can see, the strengths and the weaknesses, because you'll see the fibers spread out or real close. You want them to be real close and real straight lines, not wavy, because that shows constitutional strength, And it says, through the application of iridology, it is possible to absorb normal and abnormal reflex signs. See, that's really the core of what I wanted to explain to you today, that really is the part that I love about iridology the most, is how we can see that reflex connection with the iris fibers and the nervous system of the body, including the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. It's very interesting how we can see that. And the way Dr. Morris brought it to the table is he taught us about how to understand lymphatic iridology. And he explained that, you can see the autonomic system and the central nervous system in the body. And the central nervous system is in the top portion of the iris, and that's the head area. And the autonomic represents the rest of the body, and that's the ring that's around the bowel wall called the autonomic nerve wreath. It's very interesting. I'll be going over that when I talk about the nervous system too. And then it says the iris is connected to every organ and tissue of the body by way of the brain and nervous system. The nerve fibers receive their impulses by way of their connections to the optic nerve and the spinal cord. Nerve fibers in the iris respond to changes in the body tissues by manifesting a reflex psychology that corresponds, physiology that corresponds to specific tissue changes and locations. This is what Dr. Jensen called the neural arch reflex. And that's what he talked about in this book. And that's what I'm going to be going over when I talk about the nervous system too, you know, because it's a very important part to understand. And that's why I'm so passionate about explaining it to people, because I see it playing out in people's lives all the time in just normal day talking with people, you know. I was just reading a Facebook post because I'm on Facebook a good bit, and someone is explaining that they have a lot of heart palpitations and arrhythmias. And I was explaining that, you know, when we look in the iris in the left eye where the heart zone is, it's right there on the descending colon, you know, and it's got a strong connection to the nervous system. And I can see that all the time when people have, you know, those conditions. They have lots of anxiety and stress and worry, and then that exacerbates or brings it on more, where they feel more of those heart palpitations or arrhythmias, you know. But let me get back up some, and let's first talk about that when we understand iridology, the body is kind of like, you know, parallel or biparallel. It's just different ways to explain it. What I mean is the right eye covers the right half of the body and the left eye covers the left half of the body. So that when people ask about iridology, they're like, do you need a picture of both of my eyes? And I'm like, yes, because that's different sides of the body. And you can see stronger weaknesses or stronger strength in one eye versus the other. You can have a stronger kidneys or adrenals in one eye, which can make you have higher blood pressure or lower blood pressure in one half of the body versus the other half of the body. That's why when we get our blood pressure taken, we want to test both arms, and no medical association will understand that one, you know, because they're like, what's the point? But you can see differences, and I see that a lot. People have different blood pressure readings, and remember, the top number is the adrenals and the bottom number is the kidneys. That's what they represent. And if in normal blood pressure, according to Dr. Morris, is 120/60, not 120/80, that means your kidneys are too high. When the number's too high, that shows inflammation, shows acidosis in the body that's causing that inflammation. And when they're too low, that means that's underactive. That means it's weakened from all the burdens of acid inflammation and congestion in the body. And a lot of times when people get off the stimulants, like, you know, animal products, coffee, sodas, energy drinks, things that are stimulants, even chocolate, you know, then their blood pressure a lot of times goes down. And most people have low blood pressure because most people have weak adrenals that creates that low blood pressure, you know. And that's what I experience too. And that's why I have to take licorice root, you know, a good bit when especially when I'm detoxing, to help support my nervous system, to support my endocrine system, to support my adrenals, you know, and that's very important, you know. But now let's talk about the colors of the iris. That's the next part that I wanted to talk about. That's very important because a lot of people, they get so confused about it because there's also different types of iridology. And the type of iridology that I'm explaining to you guys today is what we call more the American iridology, and not the German type iridology. German type iridology, they think that the different colors of the iris mean different things. And the type of iridology that Dr. Jensen and Dr. Morris teaches is the type of iridology where the different colors of the iris are only two colors. There's only two colors that's true colors of the iris, blue and brown. A green eye is a dirty blue eye. A blue eye that's turned brown is not a brown eye. It's a blue eye that has chronic lymphatic congestion. That's what the different colors of the iris is. When it's a blue eye and it's turned yellow, it's the subacute stage of lymphatic congestion. And that's where Dr. Morse taught us about lymphatic iridology, is the different colors of the iris. Now, when you see a blue eye and it has a lot of white in the blue eye, that's heavy lymphatic congestion in the acute stage. And that can also be from someone that consumed lots of dairy products and things like that, you know. And that's the acute stage. That's the stage where you feel all the pain, the inflammation, the sensitivities. You know, you're real sensitive to things. You can have conditions in the body that are hyperactive, not hypo, which is underactive, but hyper, which is overactive, you know. And then as it degrades in a blue eye, it goes from white to yellow, and then from yellow to green, and then from green to brown. And then it'll get so brown, it'll start to look black. And those brown and black stages, that's the chronic and degenerative stages of a blue eye, because it's been such a buildup of lymphatic waste. You know, I think that I have blue eyes because my eyes have lightened up a good bit over the years of working on myself. And here's how you can tell too, if more than likely you are a blue eye that's turned brown, is if either one of your parents or grandparents have blue eyes, then the likelihood of you having blue eyes is very probable. You know, there's most of your cultures that have true brown eyes are those that are Spanish, you know, Mexican, Asian, Native American, you know, those cultures that truly have, or Middle Eastern people, they have true brown eyes. And when you see photographs, you know, in the future, maybe if I do these presentations again, I will have a system set up on Zoom where I can share my screen, which I could do it now, but I don't want to overcomplicate it and take up too much time. But that's where my online iridology readings that I give a Zoom reading. And that's what I do with people, is I take their eye photos and I give them other examples, and I share my screen, my desktop, and I show them in a presentation on all these different photographs of the iris and how they're different and how they look different in different people. It's very interesting, you know, and because there's definitely a way you can go more into it in a presentation form by looking at different photos and examples. That's why in Dr. Jensen's book here, you know, see, there's so many examples of let me find some good examples to show you. There's so many examples of you know, of beautiful iris photographs in the book, you know, that explains all the different stages and all the different, you know, like signs and systems, you know. And then we have these transparencies that we overlay the iris, and that's how we read it. I'll take the iris photo when it's digital, and then I'll take this transparency and I'll lay it over the screen, and that helps me to line everything up. But I also use a form of mapping that Dr. Morris taught too, how to map out the iris as well. And that's very important, because when you have the orientation of the face and it's straight ahead, not at the side when people take a photograph, then I can keep my mapping all straight and lined up. That's why it's very important how we take the photographs of the eye. And if I have time at the end of the presentation, I'll go over that briefly so that you will know how to take your own eye photographs if you're interested in getting an eye reading with me in the future, you know. But going back to the colors of the iris, in a brown eye, you will see it go from real dark brown, a true brown eye. You'll see it go from real dark brown to lighter shades of brown, because the darker the shade of brown in a true brown eye is chronic or subacute or chronic lymphatic waste buildup. You know, but a blue eye is what's really evident, you know, because we can see many different colors, and it's not just the lymphatic waste and how it's degraded, it's also the toxins and the accumulation of poisons and chemicals. You know, you can see what we call drug spots, or Sora spots is what Dr. Jensen called them. But I simplify that and call them drug/toxin spots. And then if you see orange in the iris, especially around the autonomic nerve wreath, that's like a little ring around the central part of the iris. That's the area where you see the nervous system enhanced or expressed. And if you see a lot of sulfur and buildup, like if you see a blue eye and you see a lot of orange or brown around the center part of the iris, you know, then that's their stomach and bowel area has a lot of buildup of sulfur and you know, chemical buildup, and we can see that a lot in blue eyes. Like I said, again, I could have a presentation where I could show many examples of that too, and I do that with my clients, you know. But that's the understanding of the colors. You know, I have a lot of people that they're very shocked when I say that, you know, your hazel eyes or your green eyes are not natural. You know, that's lymphatic waste buildup in the subacute stage. And then when I say you're not a true brown eye, they're like, but Thad, I was born that way. I'm like, well, that's because you inherited that from your parents, you know, just like I did, just like so many people did, because you will never see blue in a true brown eye. If you ever see any blue or green in your brown eye, when you look real close with a magnifying camera or a, you know, scope or anything that you can see down below the top surfaces of the iris, because a lot of times the top surface of the iris is covered over with lymphatic waste. That was my experience. My eyes used to be really, really dark brown, more than they are now when I first started. And then as I cleaned up the body, I started looking in the mirror and I could notice my own eyes getting lighter. And then when I took photographs of my eyes, I noticed they were getting progressively lighter. And then there is a sign you can see in brown eyes easier than you can blue eyes. It's nerve rings or stress rings. They're going around in circles around the iris. It's kind of like, you know, towards the middle of the iris, and it's in circles. And that's showing a sign of stress or anxiety buildup, and also a sign of a weak nervous system as well. But you can see in those stress rings below or through the buildup of lymphatic waste, and you can see the true color underneath that, through those stress rings underneath that top cover. And that's what you can see in mine too. You can see below the brown, you can see blue coming out of the stress rings. And that's why I have a very strong, you know, conclusion that I'm more than likely blue eye. Plus, like I said, both of my grandparents on my mom's side was blue eyes. And so I'm more than sure that that's what I inherited as well, you know. So that's the different explaining of the what we see in the iris. And like I said, again, when you see a lot of dots or spots or like they look like little rust spots or little brown patches or little orange patches, that is sora or drug spots or toxin spots. And that's very interesting, because a lot of people are like, what are all those spots in my eyes? And that's what it is. It's just a sign that you may have had some kind of drug exposure, or you may have inherited it from your mom or your you know, your dad. But a lot of times it comes sometimes from the mom, because she transmits it to us. You know, maybe she was on some drugs when she gave birth to us, or before she you know, gave birth to us, you know, and stuff, you know, and that was passed down to the child, you know, and deposited in the eye. There's different reasons and different things that can accumulate in different people, and that's why we're all not the same. There's not a single iris that's identical to another person's iris. They're all unique, just like our fingerprints on our fingers. That's why iridology is so amazing, because it's individualized to that individual, because it's so unique to your characteristics, your genetic inheritance, you know, all these different conditions and things that will create the iris to look a certain way, you know. And so those are all the main points I wanted to explain about, you know, how the different sides of the body, according to the different eyes, the colors of the iris. And so now I want to explain the neural arch and the autonomic nerve wreath, and how to understand the role of the nervous system and how we can see that expressed in the eye. And you can even see how emotional, mental, and spiritual stress or challenges on the body can be shown up in the iris as well. You know, I've had several people that I've given readings to before that have confirmed that some of the weaknesses that I see in their body is not from major like drugs or environmental or dietary. It's more from spiritual, mental, or emotional stress that has went on in their life. You know, just to share a quick story, and then I'll go on with the explanation so I don't use up too much of the time today. Is I gave a reading to a man in my parents' health food store, and he was trying to like kind of test me to see how accurate my reading was, because he didn't tell me anything about himself, which that's what I prefer. And I said, well, you have a strong lung weakness, in your right eye. And he said, well, Thad, that's very interesting. I don't know of anything that I've done to weaken my lungs. I've not been a smoker. My parents were never a smoker. I haven't consumed lots of dairy products or other things that created lots of lung congestion. I said, well, you need to remember what the Chinese say. The Chinese say that there is an emotional connection to different weaknesses we have in the body. And then those emotions can make the organs or glands weak. And then when those organs and glands are weak, they will make us feel those emotions and feelings. And I said, when you have a lung weakness, that's a sign of great depression or loss. And that can affect the lungs and the large intestines. And when I said that, his eyes got big. He was like, oh, well, that makes total sense. He said, last year, I lost my son. He committed suicide over a girl, and it broke him down so hard that he lost the will to live. And so, see, he quit breathing. He started breathing shallow, like we all have a tendency to do when we're stressed and have anxiety and worry. We breathe too shallow, and that really affected his lungs. And so that's why we have to remember that, our thoughts are power. We create a reality with our thoughts and our feelings and the way we speak and all of those things, because that is energy too. And all of these different forms of energy affect our nervous system and our genetics of our body. And your genetics are expressed according to that, how you live, and that expression of energy. That's why I like to explain to people, if you see your eyes have lots of genetic weaknesses, then don't worry about that, because genetics can change according to the way you live. Dr. Bruce Lipton, if any of you guys know about him, in the study of epigenetics, he explains that, your genes change according to the way that you live, what you eat, what you drink, what you breathe, and what you think, but most certainly what you think, because he explains the effect of the placebo and the nocebo, and how your mind is so powerful that you can, if you believe it's strong enough, you can create it. There has been cases where people have believed themselves to dying, and they did actually pass away, because the mind's that powerful. So that means that having more gratitude, having more appreciation, having more thankfulness for life, it strengthens your DNA. Having more worry, anxiety, and fear, it weakens your DNA. And so that's another part of the metaphysical energy, the frequencies that we have to remember. That's why Dr. Morse explained that healing of the body, it is mind, body, spirit. It's all of these different bodies that we have, not just the physical, because they have to all work in a symbiotic relationship. But okay, I wanted to talk about this to keep the time moving. And Dr. Jensen talked about in this book, the neural arch, in chapter 4, and I have it over here. And I wanted to, I can read it easier and to keep myself, online with what I wanted to share. Let me see here just a second. Let me find it. Yeah. All right. Because it keeps me online with what I wanted to say. I remember a lot of it, of course, but I like to, read it also to just give you the true expression of Dr. Jensen's words. He said, to learn more about the bow reflex, which I named the neural arch reflex, I began to study embryology. I learned that by the second week of the formation, the embryo takes the shape of the primitive gut tube, and its nervous system begins to form. This means that the bow tissue and the nerve tissue are very intimately related, and that means that it's all connected again. And he said that by the fourth week, buds such as the lung bud and the liver bud begin to bulge out from the gut and nerve tissue of that primitive tube, and they start to bud out kind of like that, And he said by the sixth week, most of the organ buds begin to form. These organ buds, I suddenly noticed, are covered with a membrane made up of the same tissue that formed the bow and nerve tissue in the earlier embryo. That is when I realized that the tissue of the primitive gut surrounds each organ with a membrane. All of a sudden it came to me. This is how the genetic weaknesses of the mother and father are passed down to the children, through the gut and nerve tissue that becomes the membrane covering the organs. Where the bow has an inherent weakness, the organ that developed from that area of the bow also has the inherent weakness, and they're connected. This is the key to the neural arch syndrome. I can now see how certain areas of the bowel were reflexly related to specific organs, and any genetic weakness in the bowel could affect the performance of the organ associated with that part of the bowel. And the toxicity or nutrient depletion in one would affect the other. This makes that part of the bowel and the organ more subject to breakdown and consecutively to diseases. That's why some people get certain diseases that some other people don't, is because it goes back to those genetic weaknesses, but it's all going back to our lifestyle. Those genetics are going to express the way that you live. If you take a person that's prone to, getting diabetes because their parents and their family has diabetes, if they live the same way their parents did, they're going to get diabetes more than likely. If they live a totally different life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, they're not going to get diabetes, because the law of cause and effect. You reap what you sow, you get back what you put out. So that's why you create your reality and how you live. But a lot of that is how we perceive our reality, because your personality is made up of how you perceive reality. It's really interesting. But one of the main things that I wanted to speak on this neural arch that's very important is I see it all the time again with the heart palpitations. When you look at one of the charts from Dr. Jensen's book that he has called the Patient Handbook, it's another one of his books that he has. He talks about the effect of how we can see it in the heart. And this is what he explains. And it was very interesting how he talks about, the effect of the heart zone, and how we can see it. And this is what he said. He said, a common example of the neural arch reflex is seen with heart problems. Diverticula located midway down the descending colon. That means diverticula or diverticulosis. It's pockets, of a weakness in the bowel wall, and different trash and pollution like seeds and different things can get in there and cause irritation to the bowels in that area. But he was saying diverticulum, or weaknesses in that halfway down or the midway point of the descending colon, can reflexly interfere with nerve impulses to the heart, resulting in arrhythmias. And so that's why I see all the time when people are stressed, they have worry, they have anxiety, and then they start to worry and think that they feel those feelings from their nervous system that's making them feel that symptom in their heart, then they automatically get the brain engaged too much, and they start to worry and think, oh my gosh, am I having heart problems? Am I going to have a heart attack? Because heart disease is the -- killer. So we automatically think, because of our programming, that, oh my gosh, am I going to have a heart attack? And same thing with myself. Before I got on this journey, one of the things that motivated me to change my health was because I had heartburn really bad, and that heartburn was creating heart palpitations and arrhythmias in this left-hand side of my chest. And I was all paranoid about, not living a proper life, eating and taking care of myself properly, and that I was going to have a heart attack, because my grandmother had always put that fear into me too, from being overweight, because she saw her own father die when he was only 50s from not taking care of himself, because he was quite overweight too, So she had that fear that she spewed onto us, myself and my mom, but it was really the motivator that really was the catalyst to help me to have that, to do something about my health, and go for it. But he also goes on, he says that also diverticular are excellent collection sites and can produce gas from fermentation, like I was telling you with heartburn and gas, resulting in pressure upon the heart that mimic heart attacks. See, exactly what I was just explaining. An emergency room attendant will tell you about the large number of people who arrive believing they're experiencing a coronary, when in fact their troubles stem from intestinal gas pressure that are reflexly affecting the heart. Symptoms associated with bowel irritation may manifest in the heart, but in such a case, there's nothing wrong with the heart itself. And I see that all the time. I'll have so many of my clients that they'll repeat to me that they went to the doctor many times and got their heart checked out because they were so paranoid about that heart palpitations that the doctor ended up saying, no, you don't have anything wrong with your heart. It must be something else that's making you feel that feelings in your heart. And so that's what I'm explaining. And I've even seen it in my parents' health food store before I got into all of this. We would have people come in and they'd say, man, I'm having heartburn so bad, man. I think I'm having heart problems. I'm like, no, you're just having some gas. Here, chew up some of these healthy version of Tums. And then they burped a few times and they were like, wow, you just saved me a trip to the hospital, because the hospital is across the road from my parents' health food store, you know. And so it's very interesting how I kept seeing all these little things, all these little clues, all these little synchronicities, all these little things that would add up to show me that, you know, over the long run, that iridology is so amazing because it's connected to the nervous system. And when it's connected to the nervous system, you can see it. You know, that same guy that had the lung weaknesses, I also told him, I said, you got a major weakness on your left kneecap. I said, you know, and he said, well, that's interesting, Thad. He said, several years ago, I had a chainsaw accident and I have a big scar on my left kneecap. And I didn't even know that. He didn't tell me that. I've seen it in his eyes, you know, and it's because, again, it registered in the nervous system. And so it left a mark, you know, and that's what I was going to mention briefly, but I forgot to do it at the beginning. One of the very first examples in the late 1800s from a guy, and I can't pronounce his name, but he was from Italy. He was raising, I think, I forgot how the story goes, but he had an owl that came to see him, and he got, like, he was taking care of the owl or something, and he accidentally broke his leg. And he could see when he broke his leg that a little black mark showed up in his iris, you know, and he noticed that, you know, that it showed up after he broke his leg, and then he nursed him back to health. And then the bird flew away, but then it kept coming back, I guess, periodically. And it came back one time after the leg had already healed, and it was a year or two later, and he's seen white lines around where that black area was in the iris. And that was what Dr. Jensen talked about later, about the healing lines, how it shows that iris will also give us indications that that area has healed. And you'll also sometimes see the little weakness holes, you know, the little areas, the markings, they'll close in some, you know, you can see different healing marks in the iris, you know, and you can definitely see your eyes, you know, getting the lymphatic waste to come out too, you know. And then one last thing about the example of the nerve interference that can result from chronic irritation at the sigmoid flexure of the colon. It's where the colon, the very last part underneath the descending colon, is the sigmoid colon, and there's a bend right there. Just like you have two bends at the top of your intestines, or the transverse colon, and the first one coming from the ascending to the transverse is called the hepatic flexure, and the one on the right, or the left-hand side of your body, you know, is that one is where it goes from the transverse to the descending. That one's called the splenic flexure. And then when you go down to the sigmoid, that's called the sigmoid flexure, the little bend, where when you have a weakness, genetic weakness in that area, it can affect either the spleen and make people over worry and have anxiety and stress, or it can affect the hormonal system in that left side of the body, which it can affect the left testes in the male or the left ovaries in the female. And that's what Dr. Jensen explains here. He says in females, the reflex area most associated with this is the ovaries. I know from experience that many an ovarian condition or menstrual problem is associated with this. I cannot help but wonder how many doctors think of the bowel when their parents complain of these troubles. You know, and so that was all of what I wanted to read and explain to you from Dr. Jensen's book about the bowel wall and that autonomic nerve root that I was telling you about, and how it connects. And there's many different examples, you know, it's really interesting, you know, how we can see these things. And I want to do, because I'm getting towards the end of my presentation, you know, I just wanted to do a test and see if it will work. Let's see here. Just give me a second. I want to find it. Yes, right here. I have it available. So let's do it like this, and let's do it like this, and let's do this. And now let's do a test, and I want to see if it'll work. While I still have a little time. Let's see. Yeah,
you've got 21 minutes left, Tad.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I have plenty of time then. Here's my desktop. Excuse the messiness, you know, but I wanted to show you some of these photos. this is, y'all may have seen that Marie posted this photograph of the iris and or the iris chart, let me say, on when she told her that I was going to be talking about it. But see, if you guys can see the right eye, for example, see, this is the pupil in the center, the black, and then this is the stomach around it. And then you'll see on the bottom, you'll see it'll say cecum. I don't know if you can see my cursor here. This is the cecum, and then you'll see it goes into the ascending, and then there's the bend for the hypactic flexure, you know, that I was telling about. And then this is the transverse colon. And then this is where you see the master glands, the pituitary, the pineal. This is where you see the sinus congestion in the head. This is where you see the brain flares that can tell if, you know, you have different neurological and, you know, physiological and psychological conditions going on in the brain. I can even see there's an area in the brain called the ego pressure, you know, in the iris. And if there's a strong weakness in that area, a person can have a tendency to be a narcissist. And I've already seen that come true in many, many cases with people where the way they were behaving, it correlated to what their eyes were telling me. And it's very amazing how you can put all those puzzle pieces together just by what the eyes are telling me. You know, like all the cultures used to say it, the eyes are the windows to the soul, you know, and it truly is in so many ways, you know. But it goes on, and see this white ring, that's the autonomic nerve wreath, you know, or the collarette, or the bow wall, because it's around the area where you see the bow wall, you know. And this is the gallbladder right here, and the pancreas, and see how they're right there on top of that bow wall, and that's that neural arch connection. And so a lot of people have gallbladder problems and pancreas problems and adrenal problems or weaknesses, bladder weaknesses, pituitary. Yes, the pituitary and the hypothalamus, the master glands, also the parathyroid and the thyroid, all due to having dirty colon or dirty small intestines, you know, because it's that neurological connection, the neural arch that we've been talking about, or that I've been talking about. And then when I, let me see here, let me unmaximize it and let me move it over, and then I'll just do it this way. And then I'll show you, see, here's the heart zone that I was telling you about. Here's the descending colon, you know, transverse, the hypactic flexure, then the descending colon, there's the heart zone. And see how it lays right on the wall of the descending colon, or right on the autonomic nerve wreath. And then there's that big bend in the sigmoid colon called the sigmoid flexure, that it can affect the spleen and the ovaries or the testes. And then it comes down and it comes through between the urinary tract and the adrenals. And there's the rectum and the anus, and then the vagina or the penis of the male. And that whole area can be really weak in a lot of people from time to time, you know. And so it's really interesting. And then here is a really interesting chart that I wanted to show you guys, that is from Dr. Jensen's Doctor Patient Handbook, you know. And this is that chart I was telling you about. See, this is the descending colon, this is the heart zone, the bronchioles. This is the hypactic flexure, you know, where it can affect the medulla, the mastoid, the ear. A lot of people have mastoid and ear weaknesses, like have tubes in their ears, have all of those things because they were put on the wrong kind of fuel to start off with, either dairy or bad formulas, because a lot of times, you know, mothers aren't always able to breastfeed properly or long enough, you know, and then all that head congestion is created from that improper fuel, and then that affects the genetic weaknesses in those ear and the mastoid. The mastoid is the bone plate behind the ear of the skull, you know. And then I can see a lot of times people have neck and shoulder weaknesses, and that's from the bowels. You know, I have a lot of female clients that talk about fibromyalgia and shoulder weaknesses and shoulder pain, and that's also where you hold your tension and your stress. And I can see that they also have that correlation where they'll have conditions that are coming from right below these flexure areas, these bends of the colon, because those bends again can get genetically weak, and they can get congestion built up in those bends, and then it can affect all this area: neck, shoulders, ear, mastoid, medulla, all that on both sides, you know, again, of the transverse colon where it meets those areas. And then when the small intestines comes in right here through the ileocecal valve, And then a lot of waste can build up sometimes in the very first part where the appendix is. And that can cause people to have issues with the appendix. Also, that's the same area where the kidneys are, the right foot, the groin, the pelvis, ovaries, testes, and the right side. You could see all that, the gallbladder, liver, all that is a lot of times weakened in that area because a lot of the waste will build up in that first part of the cecum. And then when people are on too much chemical sterilizing agents, antibiotics, bleach, Lysol, hand sanitizer, all those chemical sterilizing agents, it greatly affects their microbiome. And the appendix is the bacteria storehouse of the body for our good bacteria of our intestines. And so it's very important that we, don't use those chemical sterilizing agents because they cause more problems than they help. It's hard to explain that to people that think that, oh, I thought that was helping me because that was sterilizing the bad bacteria, but they don't realize we are more bacteria than we are human, and we're designed to have more beneficial bacteria than we are candida or yeast or negative bacteria, because the candida and yeast are trying to really clean up the waste, the lymphatic waste and the trash and all the sulfur and different toxicity that it's in our bodies. It's just when they become overgrown because we don't have enough beneficial bacteria. We don't have enough good bacteria. Yeah, we have roughly 50 to 100 trillion cells that make up our body, but we have over 200 trillion cells of bacteria that live in our body. And it's supposed to be 80% beneficial bacteria and only 20% of the negative or cleaning type bacteria, So that's why we have to live in a symbiotic relationship with it. And one of the biggest things that I've learned working in my parents' health food store and being in these natural communities is we need to avoid all man-made chemicals as much as possible. In our beauty care products, home cleaning products, in our environment, what we breathe, what we put on our skin, what we eat, what we drink. I was just at the health food store yesterday, and someone come in with some real strong perfume or cologne, and the lady that works with us, she started having an allergy reaction because she couldn't breathe, and she started sneezing, she started getting headache, and those strong chemicals affect us in ways we're not even aware of because they're not natural, and they also affect us neurologically because, as Dr. Morse explained, anything you breathe in like that is a neurotoxin, and that's affecting your brain and affecting your lungs. So again, we have to be careful what we expose ourselves to. And I know we can't always do stuff about our environment that we can't, outside of our homes, but you can be cautious inside your home and what's going on inside your home because that's under your control, Now, not all of it is. Our walls, our furniture, they're off-gassing and stuff too, releasing toxins. But I'm saying we can avoid adding to that by, doing more things that's not as good, But yeah, that's interesting, that photograph. And then let's see, this was one more I wanted to share with you. This was what I was reading to you about from Dr. Jensen about the neural arch and about this is the embryonic stage of development. And see, that's the primitive gut tube. And then these are the organs and how they bud out from that primitive gut tube. There's even the leg bud right there. And that's what he was explaining, that, that's how the embryo starts to grow. And that's where we can see a lot of the genetic weaknesses. So here's a report that I was doing for a client. Here is an example of a good brown eye, good photograph. It's hard to take brown eye photographs. They can be challenging, but this is a professional grade quality shot. And see, these are the genetic weaknesses. And this is even though you can't see it in this brown eye, this is the autonomic nerve wreath that goes around like that, And then these are all those stress rings I was telling you about. See all those different stress rings and stuff, And let's see, I'll show you a couple more good quality photographs because I have it in my folder right here. And then we will talk about a couple other things before I wrap it up. Here is a nice blue eye photograph. This was taken with just a newer model Samsung smartphone. You just have to get enough light. See, she used lighting from the side, to help illuminate it. But you can also use a flash with a blue eye. But see, that's a very strong, that's a right iris. And if I take my chart on a right iris and I look, I'm almost certain if I remind myself, yes, exactly what I thought. That is a very strong and chronic adrenal and kidney weakness. And then also that's a leg and thigh weakness, and see, that's a genetic weakness, and that's called a lacuna. And see, that comes from the autonomic nerve wreath. You can see it's right around there. It's just real faint. but I'll give you another example of a better shot of what the autonomic nerve wreath looks like. You know, so here's a good shot in another brown eye. See, these are true brown eyes because you don't see any blue. You know, see, that's the autonomic nerve wreath. See that little wavy line around there? And then these little lines, those are radiosolaruses. They're either major or minor. That's a major one. That's a major one. And these are in the head zone area. That's affecting the master glands, the pituitary, the hypothalamus. But this wavy line, that's the bow wall, the autonomic nerve wreath. And this individual, see all the stress rings again, and how the nervous, the bow wall and the autonomic nerve wreath are kind of cramped, and it's real wavy, and it's got the spikes and the valleys. That shows their nervous system's under lots of stress, and it shows they have lots of congestion of toxicity from all of these radiosolaruses and all, because that just means toxic tunnels. That's what Dr. Jensen called them, toxic tunnels. And here's another great photograph of a brown eye taken with a professional grade camera, because you can see the macro photography. That's why getting a professional that has a macro lens is one of the best ways that you can get a good shot of the iris. But see, this photograph is very interesting because you can see that's the malabsorption ring on the edge of the iris and the pupil, and that shows they have strong malabsorption. It's not real chronic, but it's definitely borderline chronic. And then see that wavy line again? That's the autonomic nerve wreath. And then these are all those major weaknesses that I read. That's how I read the iris, you know. And so all of those are very interesting. But let me show you one more that I wanted to show in my folder of all these different photographs that I have. Let's see here. Let me find it. Here we go. Now, let's see. Well, I'm trying to find it. Let's see. Books. Yeah, it's in this one. Yeah, random. Let's see. Yeah, see, these are some of the other shots. These are professional grade. See all that? That's sulfur buildup in the iris in a blue one. But I was trying to find this one that I wanted to show you. Yeah, here. Well, let's see. Yeah, here we go. This is the one I want to show you. This is an example of a 22-year-old girl. See, that's a really genetically weak person, because see how spread out the autonomic nerve wreath is? See how many of the holes and the big gaping holes that there is? You know, that's a person has a lot of conditions. And her mom and her were at Dr. Morse's level 2 class that I went to in 2018 when I was fortunate to take one of the last live intensive classes they had down in Florida. And she got her photographs taken by Dr. Morse's professional camera of her daughter and herself. And then she wanted me to do a Zoom reading with her later to explain all this. And I showed her all these photographs and explained to her all of what's going on. And see this area in here, that's the stomach, that pinkish reddish line. That means that is a, excuse me, under acid stomach ring. That means they don't have enough stomach acid to digest their foods. That's what that means. And then see how this is again an individual that has chronic malabsorption, because see how real dark and around the iris, and see a professional quality shot like this, you can zoom in real far and you can see all this fine detail that you can't see with a smartphone. Now, you can still see a lot of good detail with a smartphone, so don't feel like just because that's all you have that you can't get good quality photographs. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to say the higher the resolution, the better the reading I can give, because the deeper into the iris I can see. You know, it's very amazing. And see, this is the drug or toxin spots I was telling you about that you see sometimes in irises. And I could show many other examples, but, you know, I know I'm running out of time, so I don't want to keep searching for these things when I don't have them the best organized that I need to be honest. But yeah, all of these are major chronic weaknesses. All of those are lacunas. And this ropey looking texture, that's the autonomic nerve wreath. That's the bow wall that's very highly inflamed in the acute stage. And that's the active stage again. That's the stage where you feel all the pain, the inflammation, and see how the eye looks more white than it does blue in certain ways. And that's because of all the lymphatic waste buildup. And that's what I was showing you in some of these other irises. You know, see, look at all the sulfur in that one. You know, see all the orange, that's a bunch of sulfur in that. And then look at all the white, all that white, that's lymphatic waste in a blue eye in the acute stage. And then there's a bunch of brown in a blue eye. That's the blue eye again, you know.
You've got 5 minutes remaining, my love.
Okay, I can work with that. And then this is another shot that someone sent to me. There's a drug spot, some drug and toxin spots again, you know. But yes, guys, if you I want to talk about this before I run out of time, is if you guys are interested in iridology reading, I have a wonderful PDF on explaining how to take eye photographs. I made this up with my ex-girlfriend, and we took examples of so many different eye photographs, both blue and brown eye photographs, that show how to take them, and explains it all. So all you have to do is just reach out to me, message me, or email me if you're interested. I can send you this information on how to take the eye photographs, you know, and then I can set up, and this is what one of my you know, readings look like. It's real detailed. I put an example in there of what your eyes look with the chart, and then it breaks it down with the color of the iris. You know, see Dr. Morris's words here. He explains, see, blue is normal, white is acute or inflammation, yellow or gray is subacute, green, brown, chronic, and then brown eyes, light brown, normal, and then lymphatic stagnation turns light brown, eyes darker with each stage, dark brown being chronic. And it's very interesting how he says up here, in the science of iridology, we find there are only two basic colors of the iris, blue and brown. Many iridologists feel that because marriages between different races, we are finding that they call them mixed. And he says, I've never seen where this divides the fiber colors. You know, they're either brown or blue. They're not a mixture of the two. You know, and some people will say that, you know. But he says many drug deposits, metals, various chemicals can change the iris color, you know, and so that's, and then I go over the Constitution, explain, see how the different wavy lines, that explains, this is from Dr. Jensen's book, explains the different levels. You know, when the fiber's real close, you have a strong constitution. When they're real far apart, you have a weaker constitution. And that can be adjusted according to how you live again. And then toxins, accumulations, cholesterol, a digestive system, absorption, you know, endocrine and glandular system, you know, brain flares, eliminative system, you know, and there's where it shows the hepatic flexure, the splenic flexure, large bowel, lymphatic system. And, you know, see, my reports are really detailed. They're 17 pages long, and I put them in a nice PDF and stuff, you know, so that's, let's see. Okay. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to share with you guys today. And I really have enjoyed giving this presentation, you know, and I hope it was valuable information. And that was really just a touch of the tip of the iceberg, you know, that you can go into so much more detail about iridology. And I encourage any of you guys to reach out and get these books sometimes if you want to learn more about it, you know, because this book, it was like a freaking college textbook, you know. I mean, it was really, really in depth and the explanation of iridology, you know, and so it's a fascinating diagnosis tool, you know, or a diagnostic tool. That's the right word I was trying to find, you know. So thank you, Marie. I appreciate you letting me give this presentation. You know, I've enjoyed it, and I hope that it was of some value. And if any of you guys are interested in an iridology reading, you know, reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help you to learn about your own self, because I've helped a lot of people understand more about themselves by understanding what their eyes are really telling them. You just got to know how to read what your eyes are trying to tell you, you know. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Thornton's got a question, Marie.
Yeah, just before we move on to questions, could I just check with you? Do you, you know, the PDF, because there's quite a few here want some readings, probably myself included. Do you have that PDF? Could you send it through the chat box with us at the moment, Tad? Is that possible, or is it better that we email you?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to post it in the chat. I don't know how to post a PDF in there. I know how to post links to things.
Just bear with me. I think when you go into the chat on the side. I can't get mine up now. There's usually
There's a little document, a little document symbol. If you click on that, it then gives you options of Dropbox, and the bottom
let's
one is your
see,
computer. You can
Thanks.
just go through to
I
wherever you
see,
store.
I'm looking in the chat, but the best way really for the size of them, like especially the PDF, I mean, I can try it right now and just see if I can drag it over there. You talking about the PDF on how to take eye photographs? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because there's quite a few saying that they'd like to.
yeah.
By the way, are you all right for questions? Because
Let's-
we've been doing this all the few days. We can certainly run into break. Is that okay with everybody? Just a few minutes, can you?
Well, I just found how to do it. So let's see if it works.
Brilliant.
I just found how to do it. Let's see. There we go. And then now open. All right, there we go. I think it just loaded it, or it's loading it. Let's see if it,
Yay.
there, that's the
Oh,
PDF.
thank you.
But also I have a link on my YouTube channel. If you go to Journey to Wellville, that's the name of my YouTube channel. I have a really great video that I showed how to use our smartphones and take a good eye photograph of our eyes. And that's another thing you can do, is you can use that video on my website, on my YouTube channel, to see how, how to go about doing it, and then correlate that video to this PDF. And then you can go about. And then if you have any questions, of course, you can reach out to me. You can email me. You can message me, and I'll be happy to help you guys in any way I can.
Brilliant. Thornton's got one. Dr. Thornton Streeter, he's one of our speakers that's been with us over biofield imaging. Yeah, Thornton.
Yeah, you're saying Dr. Thornton? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Thad. My interest actually is very specific, because I feel, as you're suggesting, with you being able to take photographs of the eye, that you can interpret through iridology at a distance. And because we're all sort of often stuck at home, I think this is really important. And I feel it elevates iridology to a very high level as being one of the few modalities of interpretation we can use at a distance.
That's right. You're exactly right. And while you're speaking of that, you just made me remember one more thing that I want to share while we're talking about this. This is a direct quote that I wanted to bring up to show you that Dr. Jensen, this is a quote from him that explains that what you're saying. See, it says, while there are many ways of trying to determine bodily conditions, such as hair analysis, the SMA test, urinalysis, fecal analysis, blood analysis, etc., we do not find one that gives a more complete picture of the whole situation than the science of iridology. That's because blood pressure, blood test, they're all a sign of the fluctuations of our body systems. The eyes do not change, but every so many months. Like it takes the eyes 6 months to change if you drastically change up your lifestyle and your living. So that means the eyes are so much more accurate in giving us an understanding on what the body conditions are and what is going on. The tests that we do, they're just a fluctuation. When you get blood taken, you need to take like 5 different tests of getting your blood taken and look at the averages. Same thing with your blood pressure. Take your blood pressure over like 5 times over a month and look at your averages, because you can't just go by one test, because that just shows the state in that moment, Yeah. What were you saying?
Sienna left it there on the chair.
Have we got, thanks, Carl. Have we got any other questions? There's a lot coming in. Somebody had one in the chat box, Thad.
Let's see.
Thornton's going to email you, he said. Yeah, because many of us here are animal sort of lovers. Can you read animal eyes in the same way, Tad?
I personally don't know how to read the animal's eyes, but it's very interesting that you say that again, because just right quick, there is actually I have it in my folder right here. Let me go back to it. I have it in when I look right here in Iridology, because I've saved so many of these things over the years. I've been doing the Iridology readings full time. Here we go. I've been doing the Iridology readings full time for the last 5 years. So see, here's the chart for the canine and feline grid. So yes, there is charts that they've made up that will show, if you guys want to take a photo of it. Oh, well, here, I'll just maximize it there. I don't, just see if we can move this out of the way. But yeah, that's the chart for the feline and the canine. And it just shows different areas, and they're different colors, like there's the kidney and bladder and all those different ones, you know, again. But yeah, so there is ways you can do it for the animals. I just haven't never had a reading. And then this is a chimpanzee eye. See, look at that. Isn't that very interesting?
Oh,
And look,
wow.
there's the autonomic nerve wreath again, you know, and yeah, that was another one that I found that was really interesting, you know. And then this is a true brown eye. So you don't see any blue in that eye, you know. And then last but not least, here is a photograph. I don't have professional quality shots of my eyes because it's real hard with brown eyes again. But this is my eye, and this is where I was going to show you that. See, when I zoom in, see, that's why I think, see, a slight bluish color coming through the brown. So that's why I'm more than likely I'm a blue eye that just has lots of lymphatic waste buildup, just like a lot of us do too, you know. But yeah. So it's very interesting, the study of irises and iridology.
Wow.
You know?
We've had one or two asking. We're all animal mad here because the sister event is an animal holistic event. So is there any way you could share the chart as well, the animal chart?
Oh yeah, let's
see.
Let's see. I think there is. Let's see. Computer. Go to computer and go to let's see. Go to.
This is like Christmas, everybody, isn't it?
Oh, let me find the folder again. There it is.
Maybe just influencing you here to try it out with animals.
Marie, it's already in the chat, Marie. The chart for the
Oh,
cat
is it?
dog.
Oh,
Yeah,
brilliant.
Nick's put it in.
Oh, what?
thanks,
Somebody took a
Nick.
photograph of it or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nick's put it in, our tech guy. Yeah. Thanks so much, Nick.
All right.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, and then I'll put cancel. Oh, well, here, I just found it. I was just going to say the reason why I was going to load it. If anyone else has any questions while I'm finding it, I was just going to still load the original one, just so that it may be a higher quality or something, you know. Yeah.
Has anybody got any question before we let Tad go? I mean,
yeah, I love questions. If we have still the time, anyone that has questions, you know, feel free to ask, you know. Because it helps me to see the interest in, you know, what you have questions about, you know, with this science, because, you know, I really don't know sometimes what to tell people that they're interested in if they don't ask the question, you know. Yeah.
Can I ask?
Speaking of that, before you ask the question, in my Facebook group, Journey to Wellville, I have live question and answerings every Sunday. I'm actually having one this Sunday evening. It may be too late for you guys in England, but here in America, I always do it in Sunday afternoons. But I'm going to sometimes change it up and try to do it in the middle part of the day too, so it can apply for you guys in England too, because it's 9 o'clock for me here, you know. Yeah. But go ahead, answer your question. So, you know.
Thornton was asking. Oh, sorry, I won't be a minute then, Brendan. You do online courses, Tad?
Yeah. I work with people all over the world. I work with people Australia, all over the place, you know. And I use Zoom a lot. I have used WhatsApp for phone calls. I use all kind of different ways to communicate with people, you know. And by using digital photographs, you know, as long as you can get a good photograph of your eye, like those examples I showed you, then I can read someone's eyes from no matter where they're at in the world, you know. Yeah.
But you do courses like workshop style?
Sometimes, and I'm going to be doing more in the future, but when I give my live question and answerings, you know, I do that. And sometimes I'll share the screen and I'll show these things, and I'll have sometimes people send in their eyes, and I'll give them like a real overview reading, not a full reading, but I'll give them an overview reading, and we'll discuss it on the live, you know, just different things. I like to mix it up. I really enjoy sharing information with people.
You certainly do. And if you do any courses in the future, if you could let me know, I can certainly share it, you know, with all the animal communities and the hearing community. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry.
Brandon, did you have a question?
Yeah, can I ask Tad, in relation to the iris, does macular degeneration show up in the iris?
Yes, sir, it sure does. When you see the pupil of the eye, if it looks foggy or hazy, you know, and it's not real black, if it looks like it's got a whitish haze over it, that can be cataracts. You know, that's according to Dr. Jensen and Dr. Morris, how you see cataracts in the iris. But again, it also depends, though, on how the eyes were taken with photography, because it depends on the flash. If the flash, because sometimes the lighting can affect the way that those shadows or, you know, the way it shows up. But if you get many different photographs of the iris in different angles, then I can tell a difference between shadows and what's really there, you know. That's how I can tell also, you know, like other signs, like there's signs where you have poor circulation on the outside of the iris, you know, and there's so many different signs of iridology that I didn't have time to go over today. If I gave a presentation about all the different signs we see, it would probably take a couple hours, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. Well, Tad, I mean, it's just mind-blowing, actually. I mean, I'm just over the moon that you've been able to join us, because it's been a fascination of mine for a long time, and I've looked into it. And
yeah,
you
well,
are actually such a fountain of knowledge.
yeah, well, I've loved to, you know, I love to talk and speak with people, and I guess I have a photographic memory when it comes to this information that I've accumulated over the last, you know, so many years of doing it. And I've been following Dr. Morris and these people for so long. I've been reading and studying all this information for so long. And so I love to share it with people to empower the individual, you know, and so that's why it's really a great passion for me, especially when I have people that are interested in these topics that, you know, they're open-minded to it. Because when you look up a lot of times on the internet or on, Google or wherever, you look up iridology, a lot of people say it's quackery. A lot of people say it's pseudoscience, and they don't understand, because the irony is the Medical Association does not want to acknowledge iridology because it works too good. It's too accurate. It will show you signs in the body before you even have a weakness or before you even have a symptom in that area. That's why it's good for us to get iridology photos of our children or when we're younger, is because we can be more aware of what we could be destined for or pre-exposed to if we live that same lifestyle that our parents did, you know. And so that's where it shows you that iridology can be a preventative tool. It can help you to be aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then you can live your life in accordance on how to help that area to become stronger and how to avoid that area becoming weaker, all by how you live. And see, that's the Medical Association just wants to focus on treatment-based solutions. They don't want to focus on anything that's preventative, because that takes away their profits of having repetitive customers. So that's why a lot of these, you know, organizations, they claim that these methods of diagnostic are pseudoscience or quackery. And it's really sad, because it's proven to me that it's real by seeing people that I don't even know nothing about them. And I just look at their eyes, even when they're standing in front of me. And over the years of doing it so much, I can just look at their eyes and say, you've got congestion in your skin. Because if you look at someone's blue eye and they got a ring around the outside of their iris, that's a skin ring. And that shows they've got congestion in their skin, you know. And that's a very common thing when you look at a blue eye, you know, you can see that. And same thing in brown eye too, but it's just harder to see. And then there's just so many different signs we can see in the iris that just from looking at someone that we're talking to, and you can be like, wow, you've got a buildup, you know, of years of living the lifestyle that you've been living, and you can help that. Because I see in so many of my clients, the majority of the iris accumulation of trash is in the head areas, in the top of the iris, right there in that sinus area that I was telling you. You'll see a big pocket of lymphatic trash or buildup in that area. And that shows they have a lot of head buildup, head congestion. And that's because our colon is so congested. Dr. Morris and Dr. Jensen, they both talked about you have to drain the colon so that the central part of the chest will drain, the central trunk, and then that helps the head to drain. It's kind of like pulling the plug on the septic tank. You know, you can't get the head to drain until you get the central trunk to drain. You can't get the central trunk to drain until you get the bowels to drain. And see, you know, we have so many weaknesses with our glandular system, especially like the thyroid and the parathyroid, and those are affected from dirty colon. Well, how can you expect the thyroid and the parathyroid and the adrenals to work better if your master glands, your hypothalamus and your pituitary don't work better? And how can you expect your master glands to work better if your head's really congested? How can you expect them to work better if the amygdala below or right above the master glands is stressed? You know, that's the emotional center of the brain. And if it's really stressed, then it affects the master glands. And then if the colon's really dirty, then that's keeping the head really congested. So it all goes back to the colon. The colon is the #1 channel of elimination. The channels of elimination taught by Dr. Morse and Dr. Jensen are the colon, the lymphatic system, the kidneys, the skin, and the lungs. And so if your colon and your lymphatic system are congested, then all the rest of your body is going to be congested. And if you don't get those channels of elimination open and flowing and let that waste start coming out, then you won't be able to restore or improve your health. Dr. Jensen and Dr. Morris, Dr. Jensen, his main period of time he was active was from the 30s all the way up to the 80s. And they used to talk about mucus in the old word called catarrh. And catarrh was the old word for mucus. And mucus congestion, Dr. Jensen talked about it so many times in this book. He explained that, you know, when you get the mucus to come out of the body, then you'll start to see the healing that you so desire. See, there's a wonderful chart that shows the pathways of healing. See, that's the pathways, and it shows how it goes from, you know, acute to chronic. And at the very bottom, he said over here, he says, true healing is a cleansing and building process. Cure is an ideal that we must constantly strive for. Without ideals, we become sick, aged, and die prematurely. Always welcome a catarrhal discharge. It's nature's way of ridding the body of poisons. Decide which way you want to go, suppression or elimination. It depends on the path you take. Hippocrates, give me a fever and I'll cure any disease. Henry Lindelar, give me a healing crisis and I'll cure any disease. Bernard Jensen, nature cures, but she must be given the opportunity. And then he says over here, he says, we don't catch diseases, we create them by breaking down the natural defenses according to the way we eat, drink, think, and live. You know, and so it's very, very interesting, you know, and this chart, I've talked about this chart. I have a photograph of this one too, and I can put it in the chat, and that way you guys can have a copy of it. And but that photograph, well, I'll speak of it right quick before, or as I'm getting it. That photograph is very powerful because it explains that when we have an acute condition, we feel all the sensitivities, all the pain, all the inflammation. But as it starts to get more chronic, we start to lose that sensitivity. So when people think that, oh, I don't have a bad problem anymore in that area because I lost sensitivity in that area. No, the reason why you lost sensitivity in that area because it got degraded. It went so chronic, it went so bad that you lost the feeling in that area that your body's trying to tell you it was getting worse and worse. So what I'm saying is that when you go in the healing path, and healing happens in reverse. You know, like you can't get to your conditions that happened 5 years ago until you address all the things that have happened in the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, last couple of months, last couple of years, because the body heals in reverse. So the body's going to go from degenerative, where the person didn't feel any sensitivity, didn't feel any pain, didn't feel any inflammation. And then all that inflammation and pain is going to come back when they get back to the acute stage, which is the stage of healing. And then they're going to panic, and they're going to think, oh my gosh, something's getting worse because the pain's coming back. When no, that's just the way the body heals, is that your body's going to give you signs that something's going on when you're in the active stage. When you get so degraded and you lose that nerve sensitivity, that nerve feeling, then that's when the people think, you know, erroneously or wrong, that their problems went away, when no, it just, your body lost its ability to feel how bad it's gotten in that area, you know. So here, now that I know how to do it, I'm going to post that picture, you know, yeah, now that I've learned.
And while you're doing that,
Okay.
we've done this today, but I'm sure nobody minds because we're so fascinated with your presentation. So we've nipped into break time, and I just want to mention again, we've no videos today on Sam Buxton's Sunflower Healing Trust. Thank you to anybody that's donated to this wonderful charity. And if anybody's watching the recordings, which I know there's so many of you asking, when's the recordings out, Marie? And there will be in perhaps 10 days. Thanks, Nick. 2 weeks. So Nick's put out the donation, but as I say, anybody watching recordings, please, the donations would still be open for this more than deserving charity. And whilst Tad's doing that, we're going to meet back at, we have to be back for 20 past for Dr. Anna from Mexico. And I want to thank Tad, obviously.
Yes, I do appreciate it. I'm finding it right now so I can do that because, yeah, I don't want to hold anything up. You know, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad that y'all are able to go over just a little bit so people could ask questions. You know, let's see.
Yeah, the bonus gifts, Brendan, are in the ticket, in the links there on the ticket. Yeah, but anything like Thanksgiving today, we can just download from your chat box, Brendan, on the link.
Yeah, that's good. Here it is. I just found it. All right, now there we go. Now it should be loaded, or it's loading now. But yeah, any of this information, I have so much of this information and so many of these photographs and illustrations and ways to explain these things. So, you know, anytime you have questions about any of these things that I recovered today in the talk, you know, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to share this information with you.
And I must tell everyone, sorry to interrupt, Tad, I must tell everyone you've got a masses of PDFs on your website.
Oh yeah, I do. Those are most all of those are from Dr. Morris, but I have some that I have you know, accumulated. See right here, these are all the different PDFs that I have. You know, this whole folder of them is probably 30 or 40 of them. Just so many different ones. And most of them are from Dr. Morris, you know, like, see, here's the different healing crises, you know, like the different levels, like the mild, the moderate, the strong, you know, there's so many different effects that we can experience in the body, you know, just so many different things. Pregnancy, neurolymphatic massage, you know, explaining how to massage down the neurolymphatic points of the body. You know, this is from Dr. Morris, and how he explains that these different neurological points correlate with different areas of the body. You know, there's just so much information that's so amazing. You know, how to do a liver flush, levels of detoxification, you know, like different types. You know, you start down here from the very bottom with all the standard American foods and standard Western foods, and you go up to transition up to the higher electrical foods, which is always fruit. Fruit is always the #1 most healing food that there is. I mean, it should never be afraid of fruit sugar, you know, and that's what Dr. Morris even has a PDF about that too, you know, understanding the role about sugars and how there's a difference, you know. So yes, if you're ever interested in any of those PDFs, I would have to email most of those to you because I can't, or I mean, I can load them up on here, but I'm saying most of the time I have to email them to people because of their size.
Well, you know? It truly would be Christmas then. How can I thank you? I mean,
I wanted also, let me type in here. I want to type in my my website. It's just thadcheatham.com.
I've already shared it, Tad.
Oh, you did with, oh, I didn't know if you did the website. I know you did my YouTube, but I didn't know if you did my website. But yeah, that's my website where I have more information on there, and you can also see the different packages and services that I provide. And I also have all the PDFs on there too. And then again, you're more than welcome to join my Facebook group if you would like. It's Journey to Wellville. You know, that's my Facebook group. And so I love to provide great information on there. And that's how Marie, you know, reached out to me and found me on there. And she's seen some different posts that I've made about different, you know, information that I've shared. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, the last post, phenomenal information. But Tad, yeah. I just want to keep you here all day. It's been like the speakers today, but I must let everybody go and get a quick cuppa before our next guest.